Tesomet is modulating the neurotransmitters. So it's sort of exactly targeting the damage, you could say, by a sort of replacement of neurotransmitter in a way, like you would replace a hormone in a way. Since it's a neurotransmitter, of course, there are other effects that are not so good for the patients, meaning that they can get side effects by taking Tesomet alone, or, well, Tesomet is actually combined drug, but tesofensine, which is the active component of the neurotransmitter modulator, it's in Tesomet combined with a beta blocker that will cut off in a way the side effects that are at risk in the active drug of the neurotransmitter modulator, and that works. So this study is the first study, phase 2A study, done in patients with adult patients with acquired hypothalamic obesity. And these patients were really overweight and had developed overweight in relation to a damage to the hypothalamus, but at different time points in their life period, of course. So the first part of the study is a regular, you could say, standard randomized clinical trial with placebo and active medication, Tesomet, and they were randomized active to placebo 2-1. So more patients were on Tesomet than on placebo. And that study it's mainly designed for safety, because this is sort of the crucial thing, to be sure that when you treat with a neurotransmitter modulator, that you don't induce other damaging side effects to the patients. So it's basically a safety study, but also with secondary outcomes as, for instance, weight loss, changed in satiety and change in body composition and so on. So the randomized part of it has been, it's not published in a scientific journal yet, but it's being submitted pretty soon. But it's been presented at a few congresses, and also by the company Saniona that are producing the Tesomet preparation. But after the 24 weeks of a double-blind randomized trial, it was followed by an open label extension of another 24 weeks, where all patients continued on Tesomet, which means those that had been randomized to placebo were switched to Tesomet as well. So that means that part of the trial then has a group of patients who have been on Tesomet all the time, from the beginning, randomized to Tesomet, and for the full 48 weeks. But then another group of patients that were initially on placebo and shifted to Tesomet and then followed for the next 24 weeks. And this is, of course, a little bit more difficult to calculate statistically how to look at that, because they're not quite comparable from start to the end. But one of the main points of the results are, even though it's a much smaller group, is that the patients on placebo started losing weight when they went into the open label, which means they were switched to the active preparation. So they also lost weight to a very, very significant degree during the following 24 weeks. Well, one thing we need to look into further details about as well and which actually only endocrinologists can do, is that these patients were receiving various hormone replacements due to their pituitary insufficiency, and some of them were replaced on many hormones, but it seems that all of them received thyroid hormone, which is in a way a simple hormone, but in a way complicated in a study like this, and it will be in patients like this when they actually do lose weight, because it's partly weight based, the thyroid replacement, and at the same time it has a very long half-life, which means when we change medication and reduce it because they get too much, we can measure that in the blood, then it will take several weeks until it's in a steady state again. So we have to look into more detail how that has influenced some of the results. It doesn't result the weight loss probably, because this is a result of the weight loss, but we have to make sure that we don't make them hypothyroid, so that we are again posing another problem to them. And that's also the reason why we had blood samples from the patients very frequently, because we were aware of this potential problem. And it's a small group, as I mentioned, because it is a rare disease, and this was done only in one center. So the next steps will be, and I know that the company is trying to approach and send or submit a new protocol to FDA for approval, will be a larger study, checking again different dosages of Tesomet, and including more centers dealing with these patients. As far as I have understood, probably both in the United States and Europe, and then following for a longer period and having a larger group to sort of enforce the statistics and the efficacy of the drug, and not only the safety, because the power calculation in the first study that we presented is based on safety and not of the efficacy variables.